Well, welcome everybody. I'm so excited to have Jenn Kautsch with SoberSis on here with us today. So Jenn, welcome. So excited to have you here.
Thank you. Thank you so much. It's so nice to meet you and get to talk to you today and connect.
Yes, I'm excited to have this conversation. So I would love just to go ahead and share with the audience a little bit of who you are and a little bit of your story, maybe to get us started.
Yeah, you bet. Well, I am a fairly new empty nester here in Texas. And I like to say that I'm a retired gray area drinker. Some people
Mm.
might go, what does that mean? Well, I'd never heard of gray area drinking until about 4 or 5 years ago when I started to realize that people could actually have an unhealthy relationship with alcohol or have something about their drinking that they want to change without having to be an alcoholic or wear a label. And that really met me right where I was. So, like many women out there, I kind of got into the networking, mom working scene when I was in my 30s, and my kids were a little bit younger, definitely younger than they are now. I was too, and yeah, so I found myself really in my 30s being the working mom, where I was at home during the day with my kids, but did a lot of work at night with meetings and happy hours. And it seemed like my 20s were more for building business with my husband, building our family. And drinking was not a big part of my life, if one at any. It wasn't that big of a deal. But in my 30s is when I really started finding myself going to all these networking events. And then before I knew it, it became an activity for my husband and I to do on the weekends and every date night. Before I knew it, it was also book club on Monday. And then really what started out as just a treat and kind of a special thing on the weekends or whatever turned out to really become more of a habit, more of something that I could just kind of turn to in the evenings no matter what was going on. It didn't have to be even anymore a networking event or a date night. It could just be cooking, cooking in my own kitchen. And I know that your audience, I'm sure, has a lot of moms in it. And for you moms out there that kind of, we give so much of ourselves throughout the day. And I think I was storing up me time or my time for the evening. And so I would break open that bottle of wine while I was cooking because it seemed kind of adult, glamorous. It was a transition from my day to my night. It's like a signal that I could kind of relax, let my hair down, unwind. But what I started noticing happening was at 5 o'clock when I would open the bottle, I would drink that first glass and it would feel so good. I would feel so relaxed. And then it was only 5:30. And I thought, well, it's still a long night ahead. Maybe I'll just have a little bit more. People are running late for dinner. We got homework going on. Maybe I'll just have a little bit more. And you can see where this goes because over time, really with anyone that drinks on any kind of regular, consistent basis, you just tend to start drinking more, not less. And that's exactly what happened to me. Christian mom, having a great time with God that morning, having a great quiet time, good intentions, getting my yoga class in, juicing my kale, and then finding myself really enslaved, if you will, to this habit that was starting to form in my life that I didn't like, and I quite honestly didn't know how to break free from. And so I struggled. I struggled in my young to mid 40s. Really, 40 to 45 for me was a real struggle because those were also the years that I was raising teenagers. My daughter turned 13 the year I turned 40. So, the next 5 years were kind of her teenage years. And they were also years for me where I was on my own journey of figuring out how to handle anxiety, boredom, loneliness, feelings of being out of control, which, for any mom out there that has teenagers or preteens like you, Melissa, you're about to step into a new zone. I just found it easy to just kind of numb some of that out and check out a little bit. And, but was always in constant conflict of not wanting to check out, not wanting to be a bad example to my kids, but also loving that feeling, uh, loving the feeling until 3 a.m. when I got the wake up call that reminded me, no, it's really not that great. It's not working for you that well. So I would just wake up with that kind of dry mouth feeling of dread. Like that's just what alcohol does. It kind of provides that high and then that low. And I would just wake up, get it going again for the next day, and often do it again and feel frustrated.
Well,
So
thank you for sharing. I resonate a lot with some things you said, feeling enslaved to the habit and kind of using the alcohol to, deal with those feelings of anxiety or boredom or even loneliness. So
yeah.
how did you break free and, find freedom from that habit that you felt enslaved to?
Yeah. So it was right before I turned 46. I'm 49 now as we're recording this. And, my daughter had at that point turned 18. I felt like I was kind of exiting a season of life as a mom and just even as a woman. I was getting close to, looking at the next decade. And I honestly thought, Melissa, I thought to myself, I don't really like how I showed up at 40. I felt overwhelmed, exhausted, not ready. And I'm saying that in air quotes in case people can't see me, because I don't know what ready looks like, but I just did not feel on top of my game and didn't really have a lot of alignment. I felt like I was very in conflict with myself. And for anyone that walks around with conflict within yourself, it's very exhausting. And so, yeah, I wanted to show up at 50, which I'm very much nearing now, different than I did 40. And I think God heard me. I think God heard my cries for solutions and for resources that I had been looking for a long time, but had not found. And it was right in the middle of my 40s. God started really showing me all of these various resources, coaches, programs, podcasts, books, really talking to right where I was, kind of that sober, curious person, someone that is struggling in the gray area. They can quit drinking on their own, but they don't necessarily want to. They feel miserable, but they can. I had the capacity, I had the availability to quit drinking on my own. I was not physically addicted to the point that I couldn't stop. So I had the option at all times to turn the corner. I just didn't know how. So when I started learning the science and understanding what is actually going on with alcohol in my body, like the actual chemicals, it really took a lot of the shame away because it didn't feel like such a moral failure when I realized I'm dealing with an addictive substance that actually creates a thirst and a craving for itself, much like sugar. There is something happens where you just have a little bit and you literally do want more, and that's not a willpower thing. It is a chemical thing. It's real. And so I think learning that and knowing that I wasn't alone in this gray area and hearing other people's stories started to really get my mind free from feeling so isolated and so flawed, and allowed me to start taking a look at what I could change and what I could do.
Mm, That's powerful. That's really powerful. I think when we, pray about something and God answers
Yeah.
us and we feel like we have the ability to take what he's given us and do something with it. I think that's really beautiful. So I applaud you for doing that because that takes guts.
Yeah, yeah. I prayed and waited. And I think while I was waiting, God was also really speaking to my heart and getting me ready to partner with him. I kept praying, Melissa. I kept praying on my back patio, probably while I was drinking a glass of wine. I kept praying, God, take it away. Take it away. And really, by the time I found my kind of key to freedom, it was more about partnering with God. Instead of him taking it away, it was something he wanted me to give to him, and him with loving arms meet me where I was and say, oh, good. I'm so glad you quit asking me to take it away. I don't think you'd want to see what that would look like. Let me take it from here with you, and let's journey together. And that felt really different than trying to do it on my own, or have him take it away against my will.
Yeah, I think the with you, as you said, is a really powerful statement. It's much easier to do something with someone rather than fighting them or feeling like it's the pull and push. So I think that's really beautiful too.
Yeah, it made all the difference in the world, because I think before, when I was trying to change this behavior, which is really what I was trying to do, was kind of modify behavior. I didn't really know how to let God into the heart of the issue and into my mind when I was in so much conflict. So it just felt good to lay it down and say, okay, well, I'm still not sure exactly how this is going to go, but I can trust you with the outcome.
Mm, that's beautiful. And it's so, so true. And I think maybe that's where people struggle. We know what we want or what we desire, but I think it's the how to that kind of hangs us up, right?
Exactly. Yeah, I needed some practical tips. I felt like in Christian circles and in women of faith circles, number one, to talk about alcohol was such a taboo, stigmatized topic that to even bring up alcohol must mean you've got a huge problem. And I wanted to say, well, I don't have a huge problem yet. I've got a medium sized problem. And I don't want it to be a huge problem. But if I can't talk about it, it is going to get bigger in silence and in shame. We know that about anything that's addictive. It's easy just to keep doing it if you feel like no one understands or you have no accountability. And so for me, being able to talk about it out loud really broke down a lot of that stigma, because there shouldn't really be a stigma with any struggle, especially if you're wanting to be proactive.
Absolutely. So I feel like, Jen, a really big part of this is having that safe space to share those feelings and those emotions. So did you find that safe space? Because you mentioned, alcohol can sometimes be taboo in the church.
Yeah. I did. Ironically, it wasn't really in the church, though, that I found initially a group of people to talk with. I really had to go out into kind of the mainstream secular world and kind of be the Christian girl that struggled with alcohol, because I also found that everyone can struggle with alcohol: moms, professionals, Christians, non Christians, that we're really more the same than we are different. And so, again, I think that I had looked into some Christian avenues, but I just hadn't quite found the vibe of my tribe yet, if you will.
So what did you do with that? Did you make your own tribe? Because I think you may
But I
have.
did end up making my own tribe with the vibe that I was looking for, because I was looking for women of all different backgrounds, but definitely a place for women of faith to be able to bring their spiritual side in, their faith walk in. Because much like you, I believe we're holistic beings. We're made of mind, body, and spirit. And as much as I needed to work on my mindset and understand the science of my body, I also didn't want to lose my spiritual component while I was really amping up these other two areas, which I had not been doing. I'd only had a spiritual side, but in isolation. So I wanted to bring my spiritual side into a mix where we could also talk about science and, just real struggles, and have a really ongoing conversation. So much of what we do in SoberSis, which is really short for sober minded sisters, is it's more of a community of ongoing support. So it's really more of a sisterhood, because like with anything, it's not a linear path where you do something once or you read a book or listen to a podcast and it's done. You got to walk it out, you got to live it out. And that's where I find these ongoing real friendships to be the game changer.
That's so beautiful. And I think it shows the power of community. I think it
Yeah.
shows the power of continuity. And I think there's a huge need. So I love what you're doing.
Yeah, it's been really rewarding, challenging. And again, I mean, if you would have asked me in my young 40s, how would I finish out the decade? Oh, well, I would have only have hoped at that point that I wasn't drinking myself, much less leading thousands of women into freedom. And so, yeah, what a blessing. And I mean that in the best way, to have had the struggle, because I also wouldn't have had the opportunity to have this passion and life calling that I do now in this new season of my life. It turned out the very mess that I had going and the very thing that I didn't want to talk about, not at all. The irony. There's always that irony of, yeah, I would have picked this. I would have picked this one. Because I was a later in life drinker, and I just kind of funny. Jenn Kautsch, SoberSis. What? Some people didn't even realize I was a drinker. So for me, it's just been really great and humbling to have something that was my mess and kind of my almost inner turmoil, kind of my secret inside, become the very platform God would use to show his glory to other people.
Isn't he funny like that? I just have to
Funny.
chuckle because our experiences mirror each other almost. So I'm like, yes, I know exactly what you're saying.
Yeah. Yeah.
Oh my gosh. So what is your favorite part about SoberSis and what you've created and what you get to do now?
Yeah. Well, for me personally, I love watching women come into our community and realize for the first time that they're not alone and talk about their relationship with drinking without any shame, without any labels or judgment, and watching just the relief and release of like, oh my gosh, I just stepped into this kind of me too environment. Like, really? You too? You've opened a bottle of wine and finished it? Whoa. I didn't know anybody else was going to say that out loud, And so watching those initial epiphanies is so rewarding for me. I do this runway Zoom call in between each monthly reset challenges that I host. And so on those Zoom calls is when we're just starting to build that connection. And that's where I just see just even connection alone without any of the tools already begins to create a different mindfulness. And I love that. And then I love celebrating wins with people, whether it's a small win like a Friday night when they're typically used to drinking on a date night and they just even take a night off. That's a win. And they don't just take it off from deprivation mindset or white knuckling it, but they choose that because they're playing the movie forward and they want a great Saturday and they're motivated because they know they can do it. So I love that.
And they have this tribe of supportive women behind them cheering them on. I'm sure that's a
Absolutely.
huge part of it too.
Absolutely. I mean, so supportive. I mean, when one of us wins, it feels like we all win. And when one of us struggles and shares that struggle, we all learn from it. So nothing is wasted. There's not even something called a setback in our group. We just look at it like feedback. And we want people to share what we call recon events. We're like, that's okay. You just had recon. You just did some recon. How was that working for you? Okay, not that great. That's okay. Pick up where you are, keep moving. This is a marathon, not a sprint. Anytime you're trying to up level your life, it's going to be a journey and you're going to fall down sometimes. You're going to slip, you're going to fall down. But like I tell the women in our tribe, if you're running a marathon and you fall down on mile 17, you don't go back to the starting line and go back to a day one or like, I got to start all over. It's all done. Nope. You just get up right there on mile 17, dust off that knee, look around, see who's running the race right there. And then get your cadence back, keep going towards the finish line and just get back and keep running. And so that is kind of the vibe of our tribe. And I think having progress over perfection as our motto is really helping women feel less pressured to have this like performance. Because what I notice is so many women, when they come to SoberSis, are so afraid of failure because they've tried to quit drinking or cut down on their own and not had success. So they come in a little gun shy, like, oh man, hope this works, or I don't know if I can do it. And they just need to have the belief that they can. And if they don't have it, they can borrow ours.
Absolutely. And that's the beauty of the tribe. You've got,
Yeah,
people that believe in you, even when you don't believe in yourself. And like you said, during the marathon, they're there, they're with you, they'll pick you up and they'll help you go forward.
literally. Yeah, right. Right. I've watched women just while someone's really down, just come alongside and go, I've been there, but I got back up and you can too.
Mhm.
Very, very impactful.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. So who was a pivotal part of your journey? Anybody come to mind?
Definitely. There were books and programs that in 2017, it was really April of 2017. I'd heard Kate B on a podcast. I read Annie Grace's book, This Naked Mind. I started listening to more from William Porter, Alcohol Explained. These are all resources that I love to share about because yeah, having other people go ahead of you and lead the way. Jolene Park, she did a great TED talk on gray area drinking. And really that's what I put in my 21-day reset, was curating the best of what I had found that worked for me. Because when I started SoberSis, I was about 8 months alcohol free. And I was so excited to tell other women about the very resources that had just helped me. I didn't want to reinvent the wheel and come up with all the science again. Science was science. I couldn't change it. I couldn't really add a whole lot to it. I wanted to share it. And that's kind of where SoberSis started, was me sharing the best of what I had found. And then since then, I've kind of created my own curriculum and quite honestly found my own voice. At first, I didn't know my own voice in the conversation. I was just so excited to find anyone who was talking about anything at all to do with alcohol. And so now it's nice to have really given this the time to kind of cultivate my own voice and my own experiences, now being almost 4 years alcohol free.
That's beautiful. And I think too, it's really interesting because as you're talking, you're sharing your journey and you've been alcohol free for about 4 years. Is that right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yep.
And so you're heading into almost a new generation of your life, it sounds like.
Totally. Yeah.
Coming. So how do you feel when you look back on where you were and where you are now? What word would you use maybe to describe that?
Good question, Melissa.
Sorry, I maybe threw you off there.
No, I like it. Good question. I'm like, what word? Because, I like that. I think the word that just literally pops in my mind is pivotal. I was at a really pivotal point, and I think we all have those pivot points in our life where we kind of see a new direction, but it just takes bravery and vulnerability to step out and go a new way when you're so used to the familiar. And that's where I was, where I took a turn, is I was so comfortable in the familiar. And quite honestly, where I was when I kind of took a break from drinking, which ended up turning into a lifestyle, I was ironically at a pretty good spot with my drinking, meaning I had had no rock bottom moment. It was very much something internal that I really wanted versus something external that had to happen to me. So the last couple of drinks I went downtown Fort Worth here with my husband, and we had our, 2 margaritas on the rocks. And I looked at my hubby and I said, I'm going to be taking a 6-week break. That was my first goal, was 42 days. Mm-hmm. And I thought, I'm going to be taking a break, but I'm going to do it different than I've ever done it. I'm going to learn instead of just trying to quit or not drink. I'd already done that. And I'd done that for months at a time before. But I said, I'm really going to try to learn, and we'll see where this goes. So I think pivotal really comes to mind, because I think oftentimes we see that way to exit off the highway, if you will. I was on the drinking highway and I saw an exit sign. I saw like an off ramp. Like, you can get off here. Now you can get back on. I mean, I didn't sign my life away. I didn't say I'd never drink again. It's turned into that as I continue to be mindful with my choices and see what makes sense for me, what's worth it to me. And so I always tell people I drink what I want when I want. And it just so happens that alcohol, for me personally, it's very personal. What we put in our bodies is our choice. And I think having that freedom and that choice is part of where the freedom itself comes from. Is I'm not, on some kind of legalistic program where I'm going against what I want to do. I'm finally aligned doing what it is I want to do. And that feels so good. And so that's what I would say is pivotal. So I saw the exit ramp. I took it. I went to a rest stop. I pulled in, and I just never got back on the drinking highway.
That's awesome. That's so awesome. And I think it's so true what you said. It's not a one size fits all thing. What works for one doesn't work for all. And so I love that, because I very much feel the same way on that as well. So it sounds like what maybe made this time different for you, Jenn, was that you were open to learning as you went. Do you think that's maybe what changed things for you? Is that fair to say?
Very fair to say. I think that all the other times I had tapped the brakes, I was still on the highway, just like gas pedal, brake, gas, brake. I mean, I was like a yo-yo drinker instead of a yo-yo dieter. I was like, yes, no, more or less. I just was still on the highway though. And for me, pulling over and setting alcohol aside was really crucial for me to begin to experience, again, that sober mind, that clear mind, and then start to plug in new ideas, new thoughts about alcohol instead of just the same repetitive thoughts. Or just, for the longest time when I tried to change my drinking, my motto was don't drink, don't drink, don't drink. And all my brain heard was drink, 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 because that's how our brains do operate. When we kind of give it a double negative like that, like don't do something, it just here's what you're focusing on. And so just learning so much about mindset and habits. I read all the habits books, put that in the long list of other things that help me. It's just learning about habits and habit loops and cravings, and just knowing what I was up against so I wasn't self-sabotaging.
Mhm, mhm. I'm curious, I heard you say the word mindfulness a few times during our conversation. Do you
Yeah.
feel like that skill or that, I don't know, I think it's a skill because I think you learn mindfulness.
Yeah.
Do you think mindfulness in that area has carried over into other areas of your life as well? Because in my training, one thing we were taught was how you do one thing is how you do a lot of things. And you can see that with the habits. So do you feel like mindfulness in that part of your life has carried over into other areas of your life too?
Yeah, that's so true. I think mindfulness in my relationship with drinking was just really the lead domino that let so many others come together for me, because I was fairly disciplined when it came to exercise or eating decent. I could probably up that. Eating good, and time in God's word, which is a real priority to me. I was okay at those, but when I got more mindful and more focused on really exercising self-control without it being something again that I was doing out of duty, but more like empowering, that I can discipline my mind and it doesn't have to take over. Just because a thought goes by doesn't mean I have to agree with it or attach to it and make it my own. I can just go, wow, that was a craving, or wow, that was a negative thought, or whoa, I'm anxious. I don't have to log in and download all of that into my life. I can just recognize it and be mindfully present still. And so I have seen that for sure transfer to other areas in my life where I have a lot more trust as well, not only in the Lord, but trust in myself. I had to actually revamp my own self-respect and trusting myself, that when I said I was going to do something, I was going to do something, because I had broken so many internal promises again that didn't really affect anyone or no one even knew about but me. And so I think the mindfulness aspect too is just rebuilding the ability to follow through. And that's made a big difference too in other areas. Cause I know now, if I lay out my yoga mat and I say I'm going, I'm probably going to go. Whereas before I was like, oh, I'm not going. And I kind of have a little bit of a hangover and I'm not going. And I would have all these good intentions and less follow through. Now I'm able to follow through more on most of my intentions.
And that's powerful. That's
Yeah.
really, I
Yeah.
think, powerful, especially as women of faith, that we are acting in integrity and we're doing what we say that we'll do. And I think it's a game changer.
Yeah, for sure. For sure.
Yeah. Awesome. Well, I have loved having you on here. I think we could talk for days.
Oh, I know. Oh, I know. There's so much of the work you do that overlaps with the work I do, because as you and I were talking about before, when women start to kind of let go of that, that wine at night, which is basically sugar, straight up just a sugar fix, the sugar cravings go up. And so I'm excited to continue to learn from you, because that's probably one of the biggest questions I get is, wow, I'm replacing, dessert instead of that last glass of wine at the restaurant. I'm like, well, probably early on when one's changing their relationship with alcohol, one thing at a time, right? I'm like, you're still winning. If you have a piece of chocolate cake and not that third glass of Cabernet, you're winning. But at some point for women, and I noticed this in my own journey, I did have to start to look at other areas, because I couldn't sustain just eating whatever sugar or dessert I wanted all the time. Started to not feel good either, just like drinking didn't feel good. And so, yeah, I can't wait to learn from you more about just the layers of really how habits and cravings and addictive substances are very similar.
They are, and so many parallels in our journey. As you're talking, I'm like, just replace that with sugar and that's me.
Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah.
God. So if people want to work with you, or they want to hear more about you, or they want to see what you're about, where can people find you, and what kind of goodness do you have for them? Because I
Oh,
know there's so
right on.
much.
Right on. Well, I'm definitely very active on Instagram at SoberSis. And so I'm always posting just holistic health, encouragement, alcohol-free beverage ideas so that if you still want to feel like you've got the ritual and the fun of having the pretty glass, but you don't want to put alcohol in it because you don't want the regret the next day, I'm sharing a lot of ideas there. So definitely follow me on Instagram if you're not already out there. And then I do have a free guide. If you go to SoberSis.com, I've got a free guide to help women kind of survive that 5 o'clock, wine o'clock time, and just real practical tips and tricks for even taking a night off. And then every month I do run that 21-day reset challenge. And so I encourage women to look into that if they're even starting to feel like they've got the red light engine coming on their car on the highway and they just want to pull off. This could be a pivotal time just to see that exit ramp. You can always get back on the highway. This is just a rest stop. And I really invite women to do that because it has been a game changer for so many.
Absolutely. And just with who you are and what your story is and what you're about and the community that you've created, I don't know how it couldn't be. So if this does resonate with you as a listener, please go to her website and please do her 21-day program and just, take that side off of the road, like she said, and just invest in yourself and your health because you matter. So
That's right. That's right.
thank you so much, Jen. Is there anything else you'd like to say in closing?
Other than, I've never regretted not drinking the next day. And so if that's you out there and you're like, yeah, I just don't know, I can just tell you on the other side of not drinking, whether that's for a night, an evening, or even changing your lifestyle, I've never regretted the freedom that I've experienced and what I lost, besides the hangover, the weight gain, the 3M wake up call, all the things I lost really are just negative. But what it just pales in comparison to what I've gained, and what I've gained is clarity, freedom. Lost a few pounds, saved a few dollars, and really more importantly, I feel aligned. I feel wholehearted, and that's worth everything to me.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Well, thank you so much for your time and being on here and sharing your story and letting God use, where you were and using your story to help other women who are where you were, because I know how powerful that is. So thank you, thank you, thank you.
You're very welcome. Thank you for having me.
You are welcome. We will talk to you soon.
Okay, sounds good.